On February 20th, 2005, a British Airways 747 lost an engine 300 feet after takeoff from Los Angeles. The pilots kept flying across the Atlantic on the three engines it had left. Right now, twin-engine jets are certified to fly up to 330 minutes, over 5 hours, on a single engine before they would even need to land. But airlines are not gambling with fewer engines. So why is shutting one down mid-flight sometimes the calculated choice, not the panic button? The answer involves a rule born from crashes over open water, an engine failure rate better than 1 in 50,000 hours, and a regulatory gray area that turned one plane's ocean crossing into a fight between two aviation authorities. To passengers in the cabin, a mid-flight engine shutdown feels like the beginning of a disaster, but inside the cockpit, it is a managed safety action. Modern commercial passenger jets are designed, built, and certified to keep flying safely for hours on fewer engines than they had at departure. Why do crews willingly deactivate a multi-million-dollar power plant en route? Pilots are trained to treat an engine shutdown as a disciplined, precautionary measure to protect the aircraft. When a sensor indicates an anomaly, flight crews do not panic. They systematically execute a structured checklist, securing the engine to isolate a localized mechanical fault before it can develop into a larger structural hazard. The cabin remains pressurized, key flight systems remain active, and the aircraft continues flying safely toward a suitable runway. Securing an engine is a controlled, calculated choice. It is precision under pressure. How does a flight crew transition from monitoring an active power plant to deliberately shutting it down? The process relies on an established list of precautionary triggers designed to protect the aircraft before a minor fault escalates. These primary triggers include severe mechanical vibration, falling oil pressure below safe operating thresholds, a compressor stall or flameout, a fire warning indication, or significant bird strike damage. At the center of modern engine safety is the Full Authority Digital Engine Control, or FADEC. This dual-channel computer monitors up to 70 sensor inputs per second, tracking minute trends in vibration, bearing temperature, and exhaust gas temperatures. If these parameters cross a critical safety envelope, the system alerts the cockpit, prompting immediate crew intervention. Rather than acting on instinct, pilots execute a highly structured, quick reference handbook checklist. The procedural logic follows 3 strict steps: identify, isolate, and verify. First, the crew identifies the failing engine by cross-checking multiple cockpit instruments. Once confirmed, they isolate the affected side by cutting off the fuel supply, closing the bleed air pneumatic valves, and shutting down the ignition. By cutting off these vital systems, a localized, contained mechanical anomaly is prevented from developing into a catastrophic, uncontained failure that could breach the engine casing and damage the fuselage. FADEC-driven telemetry ensures this process begins early, translating potential hazard into a non-event. Securing the engine is not a failure of the aircraft. It is a controlled, disciplined intervention. In 1953, the Federal Aviation Administration codified a strict boundary for twin-engine commercial transports. Known as the 60-minute rule, this regulation mandated that two-engine aircraft could not operate on routes that took them more than 1 hour of flying time from an adequate diversion airport. Why did regulators draw such a conservative line in the sand? The restriction was a rational safety response to the piston engine age, when power plants were far more prone to mechanical failure than modern turbofans. An engine failure was a statistically frequent event, meaning aircraft had to remain within a short glide of a runway. This regulatory ceiling effectively banned twin-engine jets from directly crossing the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. For decades, transoceanic travel remained the exclusive domain of 3-engine and 4-engine giants, like the Boeing 707, the Boeing 747, and the McDonnell Douglas DC-10, which possessed the redundant power plants needed to legally fly far from land. The original limit was a safety response to its time, not an arbitrary barrier. On February 1, 1985, Transworld Airlines Flight 810, a Boeing 767-200ER, departed Boston for Paris. This flight was the first commercial twin-engine service authorized under the Federal Aviation Administration's new 120-minute ETOPS rating. Instead of routing north over Greenland and Iceland to stay within 60 minutes of land, the aircraft flew a direct track across the North Atlantic, saving thousands of gallons of fuel. How did regulators justify letting a twin-engine jet fly 2 hours from any runway? The decision was rooted in the proven reliability of modern high-bypass turbofans. By 1988, the FAA extended the diversion limit to 180 minutes. Under this ETOPS 180 standard, airlines had to prove their engine and aircraft combinations achieved an in-flight shutdown rate of less than 1 per 50,000 engine hours. To put that figure in perspective, 50,000 hours is equivalent to a single engine running continuously for over 5 years. At this level of reliability, the statistical probability of both independent power plants failing on the same flight becomes vanishingly small. This single reliability threshold rewrote global air routing. Under ETOPS 180, approximately 95% of the Earth's surface opened up to twin-engine operations. The land-hugging detours that once favored 3- and 4-engine giants like the McDonnell Douglas DC-10 and Boeing 747 were replaced by direct, Great Circle, oceanic tracks flown by modern twins. Twin-engine aircraft no longer had to hug the coastlines. They could fly straight across the oceans. Reliability replaced redundancy. How far could this data-driven confidence go? In December 2011, the Federal Aviation Administration granted the Boeing 777 an ETOPS 330 rating, followed by the Boeing 787 Dreamliner in May 2014. This approval allowed twin-engine jets to operate up to 5.5 hours away from an alternate airport on a single engine, a window wide enough to fly across almost any ocean or polar region. To secure this rating, operators had to demonstrate an engine shutdown rate of less than 1 per 75,000 engine hours. Why did this high level of reliability change the entire regulatory map? In 2017, the International Civil Aviation Organization formally renamed ETOPS to Extended Diversion Time Operations, or EDTO. This new terminology expanded the framework to include 3-engine and 4-engine aircraft, shifting the focus from engine counts to a broader philosophy of system safety. The rule was no longer an exception for twin-engine designs, but a universal standard for managing flight safety over long distances. Redundancy gave way to systematic reliability. When an engine is secured, the physical emergency ends, but a complex regulatory question begins. The mechanical shutdown and the operational decision of where to fly next are entirely separate problems. Why does the number of remaining power plants change the legal path forward? Under Federal Aviation Administration Regulation 14 CFR Section 121.161, a twin-engine transport that secures an engine in flight has no choice. It must divert to the nearest suitable airport. For 3- and 4-engine aircraft, however, the rules historically granted far more latitude. Under Advisory Circular 120-42B, if a multi-engine jet loses a single power plant, the pilot in command and the airline dispatcher have the legal discretion to continue to the planned destination, provided they determine the continuation is as safe as a diversion. This regulatory divide is the counterintuitive reality of modern aviation. Redundancy dictates the rules, but operational judgment dictates the routing. Safety is a calculated compromise. On February 20, 2005, British Airways Flight 268, a Boeing 747-436 powered by 4 Rolls-Royce RB211 turbofans, surged and caught fire immediately after departing Los Angeles for London Heathrow. At just 100 feet above the runway, the crew heard continuous banging and observed a drop in engine pressure ratio alongside rising exhaust gas temperatures. They executed the checklist, secured the number 2 engine, and extinguished the fire. Why did the pilots choose to cross the Atlantic rather than return to Los Angeles? Under United Kingdom Civil Aviation Authority guidelines, a 4-engine aircraft with 1 inactive power plant may continue to its destination if the crew determines that flight safety is not compromised and sufficient performance margins exist. Over the next several hours, the aircraft flew across the United States, Canada, and the ocean on 3 engines. Although a resulting fuel imbalance eventually forced a landing at Manchester instead of Heathrow, the United Kingdom Air Accidents Investigation Branch later validated the crew's technical assessment, concluding the aircraft maintained adequate performance and fuel reserves throughout the journey. However, the United States Federal Aviation Administration strongly disagreed. Operating under different regulatory assumptions, the FAA argued that bypassing numerous mainland alternates while operating with a secured engine constituted flying in an UN-airworthy condition. The U.S. regulator issued British Airways a $25,000 fine, the maximum civil penalty allowed. How could two of the world's leading aviation authorities reach opposite conclusions on the same flight? The clash exposed a deep, unresolved division between the FAA's risk minimization model and the United Kingdom's performance-based approach. In 2007, a joint United States and United Kingdom initiative attempted to harmonize these conflicting engine-out continuation rules, but the effort stalled. The underlying safety philosophies proved impossible to reconcile. Regulatory structure and physical performance remain in tension. If these fact-first systematic analyses of aviation engineering and regulatory logic are useful, subscribe to support more technical, data-driven breakdowns of how modern commercial flight maintains its safety margins. Why does an airline's operational math often favor continuation over diversion when an engine is safely secured? The choice weighs two highly controlled, predictable outcomes. An immediate, unscheduled diversion represents a massive operational challenge. Landing at an unplanned alternate airport triggers cascading expenses, including off-route landing fees, passenger reaccommodation, crew duty time overruns, and the physical waste of dumping thousands of gallons of fuel to reach safe landing weights. These recovery logistics routinely cost an operator between $150,000 and $300,000. Conversely, continuing a flight on reduced power within certified safety margins introduces a highly predictable, modest penalty. Operating with a secured engine increases fuel consumption by only 5 to 8% due to aerodynamic drag and asymmetric thrust. This incremental fuel burn, along with minor routing adjustments, typically costs between $30,000 and $70,000. When the structural margins of the aircraft remain fully intact, selecting the lower cost represents a disciplined technical calculation. It is deliberate risk economics. How did the global aviation system respond to this regulatory divide? It did so by tightening systemic oversight rather than abandoning the underlying flight continuation model. Under Federal Aviation Administration Advisory Circular 2042B and European Aviation Safety Agency AMC 20-6, operators must maintain dedicated ETOPS maintenance programs that continuously track engine shutdown rates and fuel consumption trends. If a fleet's shutdown rate slips, the regulator immediately restricts their approved routes, forcing flights closer to land. In the wake of the British Airways controversy, regulators applied much sharper scrutiny to multi-engine continuation decisions. The industry updated advisory materials to mandate that flight crews perform rigorous, risk-based assessments in direct communication with airline dispatch and engineering departments before bypassing a runway. Yet even with these robust safety management systems in place, a razor-thin margin of operational gray area remains. When a multi-engine jet secures a power plant over a remote ocean, the final choice between a structured, costly diversion and a calculated continuation still rests on the real-time judgment of the captain. Systemic reliability manages the risk, but human decisions remain the final safeguard. Behind every mechanical checklist lies a quiet layer of human judgment. When an engine is secured, a captain and dispatcher evaluate a matrix of variables, balancing weather, fuel, schedules, and passenger safety. This decision-making process took on a sharp public dimension during the British Airways Flight 268 incident. Just 3 days earlier, on February 17, 2005, European Union Regulation EC 261/2004 had taken effect, mandating strict compensation for passenger delays. The tight timeline fueled media suspicion that the choice to cross the Atlantic was driven by a desire to avoid these new financial penalties. British Airways denied that economics influenced the cockpit, but the debate showed how pilots operate at the intersection of engineering and public scrutiny. Safety is a calculation of balanced risks. How will the next generation of flight safety regulations handle the limits of mechanical endurance? Pushing diversion limits past 330 minutes relies on achieving even lower engine shutdown rates. To meet this target, airlines are deploying predictive maintenance software. This technology monitors engine telemetry in real time, identifying microscopic patterns of bearing wear or pressure loss days before any alert appears in the cockpit. In the hangar and the design office, new propulsion architectures are also taking shape. Hybrid electric designs use several smaller power modules instead of two massive turbofans, shifting safety equations from a single engine failure to smaller power losses. Yet despite these structural changes, mechanical components will never be completely infallible. Shutting down an engine will always remain a planned safety backup, where the final line of defense combines structured procedures with calm human judgment. Subscribe to support more technical, data-driven breakdowns of modern aviation safety. Every day, thousands of flights cross the world's oceans, their safety guaranteed not by hoping nothing fails, but by knowing exactly what to do when it does. Securing an engine is not a failure of technology, but the ultimate proof of its maturity. In modern aviation, safety is defined by the calm math that manages anomalies. Subscribe for more deep dives into engineering logic.